Thank you, Madam President. Rotarians, good afternoon. We shall recite the object of Rotary. The object of Rotary is to encourage and foster the ideal of service as a basis of worthy enterprise and, in particular, to encourage and foster the development of acquaintance as an opportunity for service, high ethical standards in business and professions, the recognition of the worthiness of all useful occupations, and the dignifying of each Rotarian's occupation as an opportunity to serve society. The application of the ideal of service in each Rotarian's personal, business, and community life. And lastly, the advancement of international understanding, goodwill, and peace through a world fellowship of business and professional persons united in the ideal of service. Thank you, President.
And thank you very much, Akiiki Nora Bwaya. In terms of Rotary information, again, we remind you all to register for the 97th DCA. Our midterm rates are at $100 for Rotaracts and $150 for Rotarians. And our on to our Naivasha officer is Rotarian Moses Muchiri. And also a reminder about our dues. We want to thank all those who have made their contributions so far. And as we emphasize, we know the times are hard with movement, but our treasurer has graciously offered to come and pick dues from you so she can bank those who are ready to pay. Today, we have a very special guest. And our guest is going to be introduced by PP Miriam Woodflower. PP Miriam, can you introduce our guest speaker?
Yes, I'm ready. Thank you, President. And thank you all for attending this fellowship, our lunch hour fellowship. And today we are privileged to have a lady I know very well. She's actually an OG of Gayaza. I can blow that trumpet. But what I would like to say today about Monica is the fact that she is a lady who, of all seasons, I would say she's a lady of all seasons, because if you look at her CV, she's been there, she's done it, she's a go-getter. She's a best-selling author. She's authored so many books, even one in her mother tongue, and she's a coach, she's a public speaker, she's an entrepreneur, and previously a partner with the public sector in South Africa. She's actually currently a business owner, and she's also a home executive. She'll tell us more about that. And not only that, she is she's very interested to talk to people, to bring them up and lift them up. And even if it's times of, feeling low, she's written that book called Happiness Code. So she's a lady of all seasons in the fact that whatever season it is, she will bring the summer in the season. Even when it's winter and it's very cold and dark and storms are high, she's the light in the room. So I would like today, without any further notice, to say that Monica, you're welcome to Kampala West, and hoping that one of these days you also become a Rotarian. But more so, I would like to say, let's enjoy the afternoon as we listen in to what you have to tell us. Thank you.
Oh, Miriam, thank you so much. I'm very honored with that very powerful introduction. I wouldn't have done it any better than that. And after I was invited to the Rotary presentation about the same topic last week. And immediately after, I saw someone turning up here and recruiting me to be a member, honorary member, something like that. So I'm going to sign up in the Fort Portal branch. So thank you for convincing me to come on board. And I believe that it's a very powerful organization to be part of, mainly because of your value systems and what you aspire to achieve to make a difference in the world. So today I'm talking to you not from South Africa, where I usually live, in Johannesburg. I'm speaking from Nyakasura in Fort Portal. And right now, as I'm speaking to you, I'm watching the Rwenzori mountain. I know in Uganda, in the world, in books, they call it Rwenzori mountain, but for us, we call it Rwenzori. Rwenzori means the mountain of rain, because there's a permanent snow cap on this Rwenzori mountain. And that's the view that I have. I'm not seeing the snow, but I'm viewing the mountain as it is, and it's quite beautiful. And I'm so honored to be here today. And really the purpose of me coming here and speaking to you is multifold. And you've made a quick introduction, and maybe I'll go over that once more so that you get to understand really what drives me to do this. I just have a couple of slides that I'll go through. The first one is, Miriam has introduced me as a best-selling author. And I'm a best-selling author that aspire to write all my life, because I'm a certified talker, as you can see. I like talking and I like writing. I've liked to do that, both of them, all throughout my early life. But I always aspire to write a book and become a best-selling author. And I wrote a lot. You'll notice that I used to write almost every day, and I still do. I write daily. But I feared to put myself out in the world, because I feared that if I write a book about any topic, and my first book was about government tenders, I'll tell you about it right now, contracts. And I said, oh my goodness, what if I write this book and someone reads it, especially someone who is within my circle of business? And oh my God, what if they find out that I'm such a fraud? I don't know what I'm talking about. What if they read it? What will they think of me? You know? And then 3 years ago, I just put myself out there and I went to sleep. I hit publish on Amazon and I went to sleep. When I woke up in the morning, I had the orange banner, best-selling author. I know how big that feels. But before that, also, I wanted to capture my fears and become a public speaker. And I'm still working on that, it's work in progress. I've run through this world. I have over almost 20 years experience in the business world as an MD in Accenture, South Africa, and also worked for the government service, the biggest province in terms of GDP, which is Gauteng. I will run their procurement unit for government. But today I'm an established business owner, still work in progress. And my best career right now is I'm a home executive with a few staff members that work with me. One is my husband, and Dr. William Rubombora. The other one is my daughter, Dr. Vanessa Rubombora, and the other one is my son. He's an engineer, Itote Rubombora. That's why I call myself an executive, because if you can run a home, right, you can run anything. And especially for us women who are trying to master a few fields at the same time. I put my certifications up for one reason and one reason only. In that, in all that you are seeing on the screen right now, I'm following none of those. My current career went far from what you are seeing right now. It is paper certifications. They taught me, I always say those qualifications taught me to read and write, but it does not define you. They contribute to your future, but they don't define you. My work is far from what I managed to put up there. And these are the books that I've written. I started with the one in the middle bottom, Government Tenders Don't Suck. And the reason for writing that book was I was in this business environment and I'm trying to break through government. And I'm so frustrated. So it was a book written out of frustration, really. And when they became a best-selling book, then I said, okay, I need to move on. But I was scared to put myself out again. I went into something that I liked, which was Patrice Kasenyanko, based on a true story of a man in our village who used to collect firewood. It's a very interesting story. Unfortunately, there is no way of measuring whether that's a bestseller or not, but everybody tells me it's a beautiful book, even on audio. And then went on to write the top books, the Success Code, Happiness Code, and then about the amazing lakes within Toro, where I am right now. The books that I'm going to be talking about now are the lessons out of the Wealth Code. It's coming out on the 3rd of of August. So in just under, it's a few days time. That's the book that I'm going to talk about. And really here, it's mentioning about the lessons that we've learned, we as businesswomen, because I happen to be part of a Women Creating Wealth Association or business forum that was started by Gracia Machel last year in the midst of, I joined that forum in the midst of lockdown. And there are lots of lessons I want to share with you from that. But before I go any further, I want also to tell you about what I encountered this week. I have reached a stage where I have a number of nieces and nephews, and I'm not a grandmother yet, but I will be there one of these days. And I came across a lullaby that used to be sung for me and that I sang for my own children without even understanding what it means. And this is what it is on the screen right now. I don't know if it can be able to play for me. I'll just see if I can make this play. Watch the words.
Hush, little baby, don't say a word. Mama's gonna buy you a mockingbird. If that mockingbird won't sing, Mama's gonna buy you a diamond ring. If that diamond ring turns to brass, Mama's gonna buy you a looking glass. If that looking glass gets broke, Mama's gonna buy you a billy goat.
I'll just stop there for now, but you get the message. It goes on. And I was almost mortified when I listened to this. I said, I'd never paid attention to the lyrics of this lullaby, until now. I say, what? This is what I've been singing to my children. This is what the message is that we are sending to the children out there is, don't cry, buy. If this doesn't happen, you buy. If this doesn't happen, you spend. If I don't get a billy goat, Papa is going, this saying mama, but the one that I have says Papa. Papa is going to buy you a billy goat. Papa is going to buy you a diamond ring. Papa is going to buy you a horse. It's everything buy. Now, if you think about it, that's what wealth is about also. Whether we create it or not, it starts from the mindset. It starts from the mindset. And that's what provoked me when we were talking about this with this group of women that we had, the WCW, Women Creating Wealth. That conversation influenced us so much that, you are here, we are in the midst of a crisis. We are in the midst of a downturn, because last year we were locked down when I started writing about this book last year with it, is that we're in the midst of a lockdown. We are not seeing what is coming. Yes, it's a health crisis. It's a pandemic, a health pandemic. But it occurred to us right away that we are actually going through to experience a financial pandemic, a money pandemic. And eventually, when you look at further and say, oh my goodness, this hasn't hit us yet, but it's coming. And you can see it already. Job losses. South Africa, we had riots about lockdowns, people are hungry. We are still in a lockdown here in Uganda. And then you talk about, how am I going to sustain my livelihood? You go to pray, which is good, and I believe a lot in it, but then you stay so much into the prayer that you forget what's around you. And more important, you forget about a crisis called money. There's a money crisis, a financial crisis that is so critical in every person's way of life. It is so critical.
If that billy goat won't pull, Mama's gonna buy you a card and bull.
So it goes on and on. We reach a stage where we can't even buy because the money now is useless to us. You know, the money is useless to us. If you have it, what will it do for you? So what is wealth? What is money? So in the book that is upcoming, it's something that I'm grappling with. It's called the Wealth Code, Small Habits to Prosperity, meaning that there are certain principles of wealth that never change. And I've put them up there. These are the key lessons, the 9 lessons that I'm going to be talking about, that I've written about. And hopefully you can get a lesson or 2 out of them. So this is what the Wealth Code is all about. It's about grandchildren, it's about planting, it's about the soil, it's about hard work, it's about the humans, it's about the intellect, it's about the social capital that we have. And that's where a word called money. It's also about money. I made purpose last, I should have brought it first, but it's also what do you do with your wealth? What is the purpose of that wealth? So that is what I'm going to be talking about today, okay? It is some of the key principles or key lessons that we experience on a daily basis that are drawn out of the kind of work we do. I mean, I run businesses, I'm sure you all do, but each of us has this thought that we think about. I also went further because we are quite a faith-based family. And what I'll be talking about mainly about is from the family experience, is we are a faith-based family, and you go back to the scriptures and find out about crises that happened over history. If you go into your Bible, and I'll be drawing a bit on the Bible here and there, there's a verse there that talks about money. But when everyone had run out of money, the Egyptians came to Joseph and demanded, give us more grain, for if you don't, we'll soon be dead because all our money is gone. Can anyone identify which verse that is? Do you recall what verse that is? All our money is gone, okay? Now, when that strikes you, that you've run out of money, a key aspect, that's crises through the Bible. How did they handle them? We're in a crisis now. How do we handle it? And then we also thought about, in that conversation that we had with the women, we said, all the lessons that we have about money and wealth are drawn from the West, and rightfully so. It's about the stock markets, it's about the banking, it's about investments, it's about property. And you get a financial planner, they tell you, oh, make it balanced, make it a balanced kind of portfolio that you have. But how does that relate to us in Africa? What lessons are we drawing from that? Can we balance that? We are here educated, we have MBAs, but you go back to your families in the village and you're grappling with key issues that somehow the lessons you've learned from the MBAs are not helping you. And then one Nigerian girl, lady, I'm calling her girl, I'm no longer a girl myself, said that she went home one day and looked at and asked her father, why is my uncle so rich and you are not, you know? And then they told them a story about the palm oil tree. And in my book, I start the chapter with the palm oil tree. You know, if you know the palm oil tree, I'm sure you've been to Nigeria, even here in Uganda, we've seen those palm oil. We use a lot of palm oil. It's quite a historical type of plant. But also very contentious in terms of agriculture because of the kind of they say they use slave labor and child labor to grow the commodities, but it's exploded. It's one of the most valuable plants in the world, you know? If you look at the palm tree, everything from the fruit to the palm frond, every part of that tree is beneficial to man, you know? If you look at cooking, the kind of African cuisines we go through, we use palm oil in cooking, you know? It gives this quite unique flavor to all our stews that we make, and we eat it with cassava, or in West Africa is with pounded yam, you know? It is used in soap making. It is used as in hair. Women, we love it because it makes our hair look silky and oily, and it grows, it doesn't break, you know. And we also use it, I use it at least for my skin, you know. The refined oil itself, if you go to the Western world, they harvest it from West Africa or Malaysia and use that base ingredient for industrial products and sometimes in commercial food production. You go back into the ancient histories, ancient kingdoms of West Africa, you'll find that over 5,000 years ago, the palm oil was always a valued tree. The oil was used as street lamps, even 5,000 years ago. The stems were used and leaves for building the king's palaces. So they placed a very, very high value to it. But most important, and this way it becomes critical, things that we see every day and we don't notice. The palm oil tree is still up to date as it was then, a source of immense, immense family wealth that spans over generations, 3-4 generations. Why? Because the palm oil tree's lifespan is 120 years. It lives 120 years. So if you look at the people who plant that tree, they are looking ahead, mindset, ahead, 3-4 generations. You know, so when you note what we go through today in African families, and you note our business empires, all of you can look at those business empires from your childhood, the people who were considered wealthy, they've crumbled, they are non-existent. They never went beyond the first generation, especially when the head of the household passes on, especially that time, because we hold it into the head of the family. When he passes on, the empire crumbles. You know, so this, the proposed wealth building, I mean, I've studied a lot, I've been studying a lot around generational wealth, and you see the proposal they are putting across, they sound so alien that they don't even applicable in African context. How, and then when you always explain why did it happen that way? We blame the patriarchal cultural system. We blame the lack of legal and business and managerial knowledge within families. We blame everything. But then we decided at that point, and that is between in the crisis last year, during the lockdown, why don't we look inward? Why don't we look inward and draw on some of the workable, ancient, homegrown wealth building practices that we have observed over the years, even of those failing families that we know in our villages or towns. And then we combine that knowledge from the ancient wealth building strategies to what we've obtained from the business schools, and then our own real life experiences, you know, as African businesswomen. Now we're talking as African businesswomen, but of course it applies to all of us. And today I want to share some of those nuggets. And it's mainly drawn again from the palm oil story, the African palm oil tree, because that tree eventually got transplanted. It went now, Malaysia is one of the biggest, in fact, it is the biggest palm oil producer, but those trees came from Africa. We transferred wealth to another place. So let's kick off. Lesson number 1. Wealth is for the grandchildren. Wealth is for the grandchildren. That's the lesson number 1 that I've picked up. In Africa today, we do not have many, as I said before, businesses that survive beyond the first generation, let alone the second. This inability of us not to transfer wealth beyond that first generation, actually, if you think about it, it is the one that represents our inability to preserve our family legacies, because we don't plan beyond that first family. And when you extrapolate that from family to clan, to community, to tribe, to country, whole economies are being stifled because of our inability to manage our families. We are unable to scale up, you know, and expand after the founder's demise. That's what it is. And when I was studying this topic, I found that this is actually not unique to Africa. It is consistent across the world, regardless of the economy, regardless of affluence, regardless even of the economic cycle that we are going in. Others are able to bounce up much faster because they have the education on how to preserve wealth that we don't, okay? And that's the more reason why I believe it is important that we start teaching each other, talking about wealth as African families as we had never done before. For example, there's a Scottish expression that says, the father buys, the son builds, the grandson sells, and then his son begs. That's a common Scottish expression. The Japanese say, rice paddies to rice paddies in 3 generations. Your grandfather used to work in the rice paddy. The father used to also work in the rice paddy, or the father gets out of the rice paddy, maybe gets educated because of the grandfather's wealth and maybe goes to town. By the time they get to the grandson, he's right back where the grandfather was, you know? In China, they say wealth never survives 3 generations. Now, if you look at all this, what is the common thread? The common thread that they are all describing the tendency of subsequent generations to squander the wealth obtained by prior generations. It should scare us all because they're grappling with it, we are grappling with it. How do you make wealth survive beyond your generation? Now, one way to think about this is to have what I started with, wealth creation, to have a palm tree grower mindset. I know we talk here in Uganda, we do a lot of tree planting, eucalyptus trees. You find people want to plant maybe the South African type because it gets ready within 7 years. Why should I plant the indigenous type that takes 20 to 30 years? The Covidex, those trees that professor of ours was talking about, the tree takes 20 to 30 years to mature. You know, when we're thinking about trees and wealth, we need even to think beyond 30 years. Have the palm oil grower mindset of 120 years. Don't shun growing trees or wealth because it takes too long. It will take too long for you to realize a harvest. You know, when the forefathers of those palm oil trees in West Africa were planting those trees, they did not think about themselves as the primary earners. They did not even think about their children, that the children would benefit from them. However, they were planting. As you put that tree in the ground, this man in our ancient African kingdoms was thinking of the great-grandchildren. The mindset. That was our African wealth transfer strategy that spanned across multiple generations. And when you think about it, it makes sense because when you consult the financial advisors today, they always ask you 2 questions that help you think through your investment strategy. Number 1, what are your goals? And number 2, what is your time frame? What are your goals? What are your time frame? The longer the time frame, the longer the time horizon, the better the projected investment returns. That's an African philosophy. That's an African philosophy. This investing for the grandchildren mindset will force us to think about the future in a whole different way. It makes you to think about how you treat your seeds, the soil, the water sources, the community that you live in. You know, it makes you think about the conservation of the environment as was bequeathed to us by our forefathers, because you have to preserve it for the future generation. You know, going back to the Bible here, Proverbs 13:22, it says, a good man leaves an inheritance for his children's children. You don't leave inheritance for your children, you leave it for your children's children. That's how we need to think. Okay? So think about that. Lesson number 2, wealth is about planting. Planting. You see, in Africa, after every harvest, I know in Toro we like millet. What we do after the harvest, okay? after the harvest of the millet, we select the best seeds out of the millet, and we store those for sowing in the next season, the next planting season, because nothing will grow without them. Even weeds come from seeds, you know? So we used to put it in a granary, now it's more modern, but still, if you think about, again, ancient African wisdom, you get the best seeds, you put them in the granary. And you do not eat your seed. You do not eat the seed from the last harvest that you got. You survive on other foods, but you do not touch the one in the granary. Even in the middle of a famine, you do not touch it. We are always told, do not eat your seed. The farmer that we talked about that was planting palm oil trees, he would not have eaten in 120 years' time if the grandfather had eaten the seed. You reap what you sow. You know, when you plant that palm oil seed, you are sending a message into the future. In your mind, you are sending your message into the future almost with hope, a lot of hope. You are planting it in the ground, and then you walk into the future. The moment you put in the ground, already your mindset is into the future. You expect a bounty harvest in 120 years' time. For millet, maybe you expect a harvest now in December at Christmas time, but that's still, my mindset is that you throw something into the ground, and planting seeds is part of building this future. You know, what you put in the seed today, what you put in the soil today will decide what happens to your family tomorrow. Without planting, you don't have a lot. Your future dies, it literally dies. So when you're looking at growing wealth, always look for seed. And that's the key message. Always look for seed. Whether it's time, whether it's money, whether it's effort, your actions, everything starts with something small called a seed. Then you look for that suitable soil to plant the seed. And only then should you expect a harvest. You know, and in between planting and harvesting, you'll invest a lot of time and effort nurturing those seedlings. You know, you'll be weeding, you'll be praying for rain, a lot of things, so that your seeds, when you remove the weeds, you're making sure that your weeds don't get, your millet, let's say, does not get choked off by the weeds, and then get sufficient sunlight, you know. The key message here is when you're planting that seed, and here is something that I learned from another book, and I would recommend that you read it. It's called Financial Wealth, God's Way. Is that when you are planting that seed, there's a philosophy where we always look out for the poor, for those in our society that are not as well, those don't have the resources that we do have. It's well and good with tithes, we do everything. When you're planting the seed, also make sure that you don't only plant to get other people to lift them up, you also plant your seed upward where you want to go. Why? Because if your cup is empty, if your granary is empty, you'll have nothing to give. You'll have nothing to plant. So when you plant upward, and here what I mean by planting upward, planting the seed upward, is that you are planting into those people where you're aspiring to go, what you are aiming at. A good example, let's start with when you're in a work environment. You aspire one day to go in management position. You start interacting with managers, executives, getting mentors, getting advocates that are higher up in the organization, so that you planting to them, spending time with them, learning from them, and also helping them out. You know, that's what we often do, that we help each other out. You take a load of them. You are learning from them, you know. Let me do this piece of work. And then eventually they assign it to you. And then they assign more work and more work to you. You are actually planting a seed with them. They are offloading on you, but you are learning. Same thing with if you admire someone who is wealthy, go to wealth. Look at the wealthy people in our communities here. How many of you reach out to them? How many of you do interact with them to learn lessons from them? How many of you call them often into your sessions so that say, how did you get where you are, and learn from them too? How much time do you spend with them? Because how you spend your time, and I'll talk about this a little later, how you spend your time and who you interact with matters. They say, show me your friends, 3 or 5 of your friends, I'll tell you what kind of person you are, okay? That's what they tell us. So who are you spending your time with? Because what you pay attention grows. And this is a key point that I'm making. What you pay attention to grows. If you spend your time with alcoholics, more time in the bars, you'll become a great alcoholic. If you spend your time smoking weed, you'll be a great drug addict. If you spend your time plowing the soil, sowing the seedlings, weeding, nurturing your plants, you will have a promise of a bountiful harvest, okay? You'll become wealthy. If you drink palm wine, that's what I mentioned before, you will also end up that way. So invest where you want to go. Invest upward. The key message is invest. Don't neglect the one that you're trying to lift up. But if you have nothing more to lift, they'll move on. They'll move on to someone else who will be able to deliver more. So invest where you want to go. Spend time on what is important, okay? Lesson number 3 is about the soil. I'm linking everything to the palm oil tree. The soil is where the palm oil seedling is planted. It is what nourishes that seed. If the seed is not in the earth, if the millet is in the granary, you will not get a harvest. So yes, you've kept it, you have not eaten it. But if you don't plant it, you will not get a harvest, you know? But this harvest will only come across depending on the type of soil that you plant in. Generally, if you look at in the West Africa, the palm oil trees are grown in a variety of a wide range of soils. But however, they thrive best in deep, moist, and permeable soils that are very, very rich in organic matter. And that we can relate to even when we are planting trees on our side. So you invest in the ground, you go looking for that ground where you want to grow and where you're going to expect the highest yield, okay? So you may plant so many, you may sow millet in a wide ground, but however, the number of those seeds that you plant will determine how much you harvest, what you reap, so to say. However, the type of soil that you sow in will determine what you reap, you know? I'm in here in Fort Portal with, I came across a building contract. We're helping to put up a structure here. That's why I've spent so much time here. But we went and met this building contractor, and I won't mention his name. And I remarked to him, I said, you are too young for such a big project. For me, that is code for you are inexperienced. Then he countered to me by telling me that, you know, after graduating with my 2-year diploma in civil engineering from Kichwamba here, 8 years ago, he said, I've been leading major construction projects throughout the country. He travels for work, you know, and he also says, I've never been out of work for a single day since my graduation. After a full day of work, he attends evening classes, you know, because he wants to now say, I'm going to go beyond this diploma and I'm going to upgrade my qualification and get a degree. But then one day he showed me his bank statement, you know, the earning power that he commands. This young graduate who I thought is inexperienced will make all of us, I mean, rethink what kind of careers we pursue, you know. It was so impressive, made my jaw drop, literally, and said, this is the earning power of this young man. He started out small, seed. He started out small. He invested in fertile ground, an engineering degree, in a vocational college. His skills, qualifications, experience, the delivery track record that has made him now a very highly sought after and well-paid building contractor. It took him 8 years to get where he is now, but the harvest is worth the effort. You go back now into Mark 4, I said I'm going to keep referring to the Bible. Mark 4, Matthew 13, they talk about the parable of the sower. It is a growth parable. Go back and study it. It is a growth parable. It describes the type of soils and what they will produce. Take note of that it's only the fertile soil that yielded the harvest. You know, that parable insists that we must diligently search for fertile soil. The soil matters. Where you plant matters. So if you're going for wealth, where you put your wealth matters. In the West, they've gone and studied different types of portfolios where your growth will be growing faster. Of course, if it is, they press a risk factor to it. The higher the risk, the higher the returns, but you might collapse very quickly. You know, then there are safer risks like putting your money under the mattress. It's, low risk, but nothing grows. You know, if you invest in property or invest in the securities exchange, your money grows, and there are different portfolios that go on, but that's the soil. I'm talking about the soil. We need to study our environment in Africa and see where our soil is. Where should we invest? In a country like Uganda, we have agriculture, we have middlemen, we have export markets. Where should we invest? Where should we go? That's a question that I would like to leave for you. Always think about the soil. Where should you invest? The soil matters. Where will you get growth? Lesson number 4. Growing wealth is hard work. You know, building sustainable wealth takes time. It's arduous work. It's not something that happens overnight. You know, you may hit something, a contract, a tender, that we've seen many people do that, and they grow wealthy very quickly, or you may hit a lottery and suddenly find yourself in this great money. But is this kind of wealth sustainable? Your son watches you leaving the house every day at 10 or 11 in the morning. You go to work and come back with a bag of money. What message are you sending to that child? Yes, she lives a good life, great cars, beautiful house, holidays overseas. But what message are you giving that? They've never seen you work. You just go at 11, at 2 p.m., you come back with a bag of money, maybe some men in the sitting room, you count your money. He has never seen you work. Then he knows when he grows up, you don't have to work. I'll sleep until 10, get out at 11, come back, and then they hit age 18, 21, life becomes difficult. They've graduated through overseas universities. They are sitting at home. They can't find a job. They can't live the lifestyle of the father. What have you taught them? We need to teach children to work, you know? If you study some of the wealthiest people in the world, you'll discover that some of them have been at it for years, decades. They've put in a lot of sweat and tears into their chosen fields. They've been through school of hard knocks. They've experienced failure, lots of it. I've been there too. I've also experienced a lot of failure, you know, losses. But those school of hard knocks is what made them wealthy. Go back and look at a book called Outliers, The Story of Success by Malcolm Gladwell. I met this guy in Boston one time and I made him autograph my book. But I liked the talk that he made at the time about the 10,000-hour rule. He asserts very simply that the true key to success is simply spending time and effort practicing a specific skill for at least 10,000 hours. 10,000 hours boils down to about 10 years, you know, 10 years at work. We look at, I love watching the Olympics, and you see how early those people that are getting medals started. They started age 4, 5, 6, 7, and we are seeing them earning medals now. They were strong at it. The Williams sisters, they were hitting those balls, tennis balls at age 4. Tiger Woods, the father put a golf stick in his little baby cot when he had just been bought as a present. He gave a golf stick there. Hamilton, he started riding go-karts when he was around age 6, 7. And you see them exploding late in their teens, 10,000 hours. They've put in the time. Now you come here and you think that all grow wealthy overnight. No. Read the autobiographies of these great, prosperous people in the world and learn lessons from them. You'll see that for many of them, yes, there's been influence in their lives, upbringing, culture, opportunity, but one common thread in their stories is that they work hard. They've worked hard at building and sustaining their wealth. We are talking about sustainable wealth, okay? And then passing it on to their families. Why? Success leaves a footprint. Wealth leaves a footprint. Sustainable wealth leaves a footprint. You know, if you look at, if you don't work hard, even the Bible tells us that if anyone, I think I've written it here, 2 Thessalonians verse 3 to 10, if anyone isn't willing to work, he should not eat. If you aren't willing to work, why should you grow wealthy? You need to think about putting in the hours, the effort, the time. Lesson number 5, wealth is about human capital. About 10 years ago, and here's another recommendation of a book that I would recommend, Family Wealth, Keeping It in the Family, by James Hughes. Family Wealth, Keeping It in the Family. He's written a lot of books about generational wealth. The other one is the Wealth Compact, basically generational wealth. It changed my perspective completely on how we as African families should be thinking about our heritage, about our wealth, and about our legacies. You know, when you look at an entire person's wealth, we must admit, it's not just about money. It's not just about individual material or even financial advantages. If we draw lessons from Hughes' book, we also need to learn how to sow, how to nurture. I'm talking about sowing and nurturing over and over again, and how to grow and protect different forms of wealth. You know, one of these is human capital. What is this? It is the skills, it is the knowledge, it is the experience, it is about the social and personal attributes and inherent characteristics of the different family members. If you look at your whole family, you'll see that each family member has different skills, you know? The key here for the wealth is if we recognize that each of our family members is a resource and a unique resource, and that resource makes up your whole investment portfolio. In my tribe in Toro, we have something called Ubuntu.
Monica, is it possible to try and summarize in the next few minutes? Because we have only up to, yeah. And I'll also request that I borrow a few 5 minutes after 2. Our fellowship ends at 2.
So,
thank you.
Okay, I'm almost coming to an end. So we have something called Ubuntu or Ubuntu, which means that you are a person because of others. You know, you are what you are because of others. You become wealthy because of others, because each family member is unique. And you need to be able to identify and develop and impart that shared values across the different family members. We usually concentrate on the vertical family, you, husband, wife, children. No, you won't be happy if your extended family is unhappy, your community is unhappy. That poverty around you is not good for building wealth. There's a common saying that a rising tide lifts all boats. That's the way you should be thinking about wealth. Rising tide, lift your other family members, lift your community, and then you go up. The other point that I mentioned is about intellect. This is really about the knowledge that you have. And we need as Africans to invest in things like basic money and basic financial understanding and knowledge. We don't. You find someone who can't even calculate change because we've neglected that part of money education amongst our families. It is our duty, not the school's duty. It is our duty. Lesson number 7, wealth is social. There's something called social capital. You know, you need to be known for something greater than yourself in your community. You need to be able to get along with others to contribute to the community that you live in. Charity, philanthropic activities, those should be able to support your family mission. Lesson number 8, wealth is about money. You know, when we were growing up, we were told money is a swear word. Don't even talk about it. For us girls, especially, we're told if you love money, you'll never find a husband, you'll never get married. You know, you can't have wealth without money. You will need to understand all sources of making wealth: income, expenditure, assets, liabilities, tax. We need to understand them. That financial wealth and understanding is critical. Lastly, wealth is about purpose. I mean, that should have been number 1. This whole chapter was about wealth, but what I believe in the first place is purpose. You know, what is purpose? A quick definition here, Miriam. The purpose is the reason for which something is done or created, the intended result, end goal. So if you're a grandchild of that empire, of the palm oil empire, you get, and the tree now starts dying because reached end of life. You say, what was this all about? Because many of us tend to go into the daily grind of making money, but forget what the purpose, what are we doing that for? I find that the best way to define your purpose is 2 things. Define what is important. Number 2, what is not important. 2 things. What is important? What is not important for you? You know, it's as simple as that. It should be very crystal clear that it is. I'll give you very quick examples and then I end. For me, my purpose, okay? I've defined that very quickly. I want my wealth that I'm growing, and I'm still work in progress. I want to grow, I want to scale, and I want to do it profitably. I don't want to lose money, okay? I want to preserve it in family hands. I want my family to benefit. I want it to be used to promote unity and in the family, and so that each one of my family members excels in their own personal calling. I want my wealth to be used to improve the community within which I work and live. And lastly, I want my wealth to be faith-based, kingdom-based business. And that's all I want to share for now, Miriam. I could go on, but I'll summarize for that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Monica. I think there's going to be another demand for you to come back, and we'll be happy to invite you. Friends, Rotaractors and Rotarians, I will, as I request to borrow about 5 minutes after 2, so that we can at least get Monica to respond to a few questions that we have received in the chat, and then we can conclude our fellowship. So Rotarian Kathy, can you take us through the questions, read the 5 questions you've received, and then Monica can respond to them and to go.
Thank you very much, President. And thank you very much, Ms. Monica Akiiki, for this very informative and passionate presentation. It's really been very awesome. The questions that I have in the chat room, I will start with this one. Are the founders interested in having their wealth surviving a couple of generations? Many, especially here in Africa, are not intentional about bringing their offspring into the management and propagation of the wealth. That's the first question. Our second question is, thank you for the presentation. How do we break the rich dad and poor dad scenario, where in Uganda and Africa at large, we still think and tell children to go to school, study, get a job, and we'll get rich? How do we incorporate financial management in our education from as early as primary school? The third question is, it's good advice to invest for the 3rd+ generation. However, how should we deal with the mindset of the majority of offsprings and grandchildren who inherit investments and want to sell them off as soon as they get hold of the property of those that have passed away. Then my fourth question, okay, there's a mindset that educating the children is enough investment. The rest they should toil for themselves. It's hard having a family legacy with such a kind of psyche. How would you help on that? We can take those for now. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. If you look, I'm looking at all these questions and they all seem to be having a common thread. I mean, it's a concern, definitely a very big concern. Starting with the first question, founders surviving multiple, are we interested in surviving multiple generations? One reason why I've embarked on this mission is to us starting having conversations about this very topic. Because you'll find, we had a discussion not too long ago about wills, for example. We had people speaking about wills, and I found it very enlightening for Uganda to find that there's a lot of information and a very supportive legal information around leaving a will that we all don't know about, around women owning property, around our views, you know, passing about the whole patriarchal issue that we are talking about. There are instruments there, but we don't know about them. We are not empowered. And hence the reason why we need to go on a mission to make sure that we talk about money and wealth. It should not be a swear word. We shouldn't be ashamed of talking about it. And even what constitutes wealth, what constitutes money. So it's, yes, you say founders are not interested, but it's also a legacy that they've also found, they've also discovered, you know? That's why, because that's the mission they grew up with. That's how they were brought up. It's up to us to break that cycle going forward, to teach our sons and our daughters about how to handle money, because we'll pass on the bad habits. I played for you that clip at the beginning of this session, where in the lullabies that we're singing to our children, don't cry because mama, papa is going to buy you, you know, a horse, a dog, a puppy. If he doesn't, a diamond ring. Already you are inculcating the wrong mindset. Or you should be aware what kind of mindset you are putting in the children. The Rich Dad, Poor Dad is one of the best books that I read very early on in as soon as he wrote it. And I've met him also a couple of times at conferences. It's basic finance 101 in that book that any child, there's even Rich Dad, Poor Dad for children, even games. We need to know what is an asset and what is not an asset, what is a liability and what is not a liability. Those are key lessons that we need to talk about more and teach our children. And I know time is running out here more. We talked about also about generation or the type of education. The thing is, when we think that we are giving education, it's not just about book education. There's a family, the one you get from the family, the Jews, the Indians, look at how they teach their children. What lessons can we gather from them? Because they start from very own, they have on a dinner table. I'm sitting at a dinner table right now, and as you're eating, you're talking about these key topics. We don't. That's a part of education. The best education you'll ever get is over a meal with your family. We shouldn't ignore that. I don't know if I'm answering the questions, and I know because of time is quite tight, but my key message here, let's talk more about wealth. Let's talk about money more often than we are doing right now. And let's draw from our African experiences of our forefathers, because they knew how to handle this. And incorporate that, merge it with what we learned from the Western world, and create something that works for us. Okay, Miriam?
Thank you, Monica. You're speaking to Susan.
Thank you very much, our presenter.
Thank you, Kathy, for,
Yes, hello.
for the questions. Thank you, Kathy, for the questions. I think, Monica, thank you for your
Welcome,
insight.
President.
And it's been a wonderful talk. There are many questions, many members who have requested your contact. I hope you're comfortable with us sharing your contact. And I think a recording of the presentation as well. At this point, I would like to invite our sergeant, rather our Rotarian Moses, who will give us a vote of thanks on behalf of the club. And as he prepares, our sergeant, PP Noah, will give us a roll call of the clubs and also give us the final toast. But I'd like also to recognize all the guests, Rotarians, Retractors who have joined us, the Changemaker presidents, the AGs and PAGs, and past district governor Tusu, who had to leave at 2 on the dot. Thank you all for joining us. Over to you, Moses, for the vote of thanks.
Yes, thank you very much, President Susan, and good afternoon, everyone who is online and who has been able to join in for this call. Yes, indeed, me as a person have enjoyed the talk by Monica, and in French, they say that there is this saying, which goes that abana balikola ezaabwe. Today, I have come to realize that the French were misleading us, and indeed, our children won't have to make their money. So we have to work hard, and indeed, we are going to talk about money as much as we can. Thank you, Monica, and as the Rotary Club of Kampala West and the Rotary Fraternity and the various Rotary and Rotaract clubs, we have really enjoyed the talk, and we have really learned so much. Thank you for giving us all those wonderful insights. And we pray that you continue giving us these very many insights in the various books you're going to continue writing. Thanks, and we appreciate it.
Thank you, Moses. Our sergeant.
Thank you very much, Madam President Susan. Thank you very much, the presenter, Akiiki Otiomuno. Orubazo rubaire rurungi muno, twasiima twayega Ruhanga akulinde. That was French. This topic was very interesting, and because it was that interesting, I'm going to find everyone who stayed behind to finish, because the others have left. They escaped my dragnet. But let me first of all appreciate those who came in to visit with us. I'll start with the Rotaract Club of Kampala West, our baby, and also the Rotary Club of Hope Kansanga. Then now the big clubs. Thank you very much. We have been blessed with the visit of Rotary Club of Kiwatule, Kololo, Nsangi, Muyenga Tanka Hill, Sonde, Kasangati, Kitezi, Kampala South, Kampala, Rubaga Lakeview, Kampala Nalia, Kampala Central, Bugorovi, Kampala North, Sunrise Kampala, Rubaga, Kisugu, Victoria, Muyenga Breeze, Natete, Kampala Springs, Mukono, Narumunye, Makindye, Mbarara, Nansana, Nansana, sorry, mentioned. And if I have not mentioned you, it's because you probably did not read this. But please appreciate it. And I would like also to recognize, to share with you that we had a record of 202 attendance. Thank you very much, Madam President. Over to you.
And the Kampala Chibuli,
oh,
please.
I give you the Kampala Chibuli, and now the
and the Mengo
Kampala Chibuli is mentioned, and this is now
Kampala Chibuli, Dr. Kasene is Dr. Kasene is the regular.
Kampala Chibuli is mentioned. You have been mentioned.
You didn't mention Kampala City.
We are.
Why you didn't mention Kampala City?
I did. I did mention Kampala CC. I detail listed. If you want, I can show you. Yes, I did. I've mentioned Mango. I've mentioned Mango. This is the 5th time now. Now let's go for the royal toast. I'll give you Rotary International.
Rotary the world over.
Rotary the world over. Thank you for coming, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Monica. Thank you,
Thank you, Monica.
Thank you, President.
Thank you very much.
Over.
Thank you so much, really, really important to attend.
I didn't hear them mentioning your name.
Thank you, Kampala West.
Changemaker President Susan, thank you for hosting us to a wonderful fellowship.
Thank you, DS Jane Kabugo, for joining. Thank you all for coming.
Jessica, I see you. I see you, Jessica. How are you?
How are you? How is with your daddy?
That's been a wonderful fellowship. Thank you very much.
It has been.
But I Kampala West, I am a usual visitor.
Monica, you're on demand. We shall bring you back.
I'm available. I find a topic that is passion for me, and it helps me to refine my thoughts too. So I'm available.
Yeah.
I'm here, but I can pop in anytime.
Okay, there's a request to have a part 2, which I think we can talk about some other time. You have generated a lot of excitement.
Thank you. And my books are available on my website, monicarubombora.com.
Okay, we shall share that. And you're okay also.
Are you by any chance related to Rubombora, Junior?
Junior is my nephew. Junior is my nephew. He's a son of my sister and a son of my husband's brother. We are 2 sisters married to one family.